Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Talking Cryptocurrency podcast. I'm your host, Jason Rigden. On this episode of the show, we're talking to Jed Grant of Peer Mountain. They're creating a decentralized identity and compliance ecosystem that puts people in control. But before we get to the interview, I have this quick message. After launching the first Seattle Blockchain Conference, Blockchain Northwest is proud to introduce the Summit Series. Blockchain Northwest returns on October 16th, 2018 with a new location, new speakers, and fresh perspectives. They've got speakers from Microsoft, MLB Crypto, Wells Fargo, GE Healthcare, Hyperledger Seattle, and more. This event will focus on scaling blockchain adoption. This event will be summit format with workshop-style discussions, dApp demos, and real use cases. This event is going to be in Bellevue, Washington, in the USA on October 16th, 2018. Buy your tickets now for early bird discounts. You gotta act fast for those discounts. If you wait too long, they'll be regular price. Go to blockchainnw.com to buy your tickets or check the show notes for the link. Once again, you gotta act fast for those early bird discounts, so go to blockchainnw.com or check the show notes for the link. Hello, and on today's episode, I'm here with Jed Grant, CEO of Peer Mountain. How are you today?
Great. How are you, Jason? Good to be here.
Fantastic. So could you tell me a little bit about the problem that Peer Mountain is trying to solve?
Sure. Peer Mountain is a protocol for trust. So the problem we're trying to solve is actually how would you trust another party, another in a peer-to-peer, another person or a business, over the internet as if they were face-to-face in front of you? And how do you make a protocol that can enable that kind of trust? At a bigger scale, the problem that we're solving is also cross-chain. So we're not trying to solve that in a small environment, but rather in an ecosystem that can grow and work across multiple blockchain solutions.
And how is Peer Mountain solving this problem?
Peer Mountain solves the problem by implementing a cross-chain protocol that is an open ecosystem that has three roles in it. The roles are consumer, service provider, and trust provider. Again, peer-to-peer, so anybody can be any of those three roles. You can play all three. It depends on the transaction, which role you're playing. And the user experience, being an API, as I mentioned, Peer Mountain doesn't really have a lot of user interface, being a protocol. But the way that manifests itself is we've built a mobile SDK because we envisioned the consumer role being mostly mobile-driven, mobile first. And so we have that for Android. The iOS will come later. And so that's going to be the main point of consumer interaction with Peer Mountain-enabled services on the Peer Mountain ecosystem. And the way that'll manifest itself is you would, for example, want to rent a car. So you would either walk up to the spot where you've reserved a car previously with a car rental company, or if it's just on the spot, you'd walk to a parking space where the car is marked as freely available. There would be a QR code or some other code that you would have on the dash or somewhere near or on the car. You would scan that, which would download the service definition. So the service provider decides what they need in order for you to have the service that they want to deliver. And you as a consumer own all of your information. So you would have your identity documents, which it could be civic, it could be a national ID like the Estonian EID, it could be an old-fashioned paper document like a driver's license or passport that you've taken a picture of, and that may then be validated by a trust provider like Jumio or one of those companies. But you own all of that in what we call as a persona, and that might include additional things beyond identity. A lot of people think of Peer Mountain as an identity project, but actually identity is only one of the components that the consumer manages as in their role as consumer. So you have your identity information, but also any other proofs or facts or attestations. So I might have pictures of my house, my documents that prove that I have a diploma. All of this kind of stuff can be aggregated into your persona. So when you have that service definition from the service provider, you need to provide them with the things that they require. And then those are checked by the trust providers that they accept as trustworthy in order to deliver you that service. So back to the use case or the user journey with the rental car, you would scan that code. You would then have to provide the various things that are needed to get that car. So I would swipe on my device, just swipe in my driver's license or the proof that I have a driver's license, which could be a zero-knowledge proof. That's what I believe the future is headed to. But in the first iterations that we're going to see of enterprises deploying services on ecosystems like Peer Mountain, they're going to want a picture of a driver's license that's been checked by a company like Jumio, MyTech, KYC3. So you swipe that in, prove that you are able to drive, swipe in proof of residence. You then would take a selfie to prove it's you on the spot. and then take a short video walking around the car. Each of those elements is then authenticated or vouched for by a trust provider, which is the third role. So the consumer, service provider, trust provider. The trust provider for that driver's license could be one of those companies I mentioned before that validates documents. The trust provider for your proof of residency might be the post or one of the telephone services that provide address lookup services. Trust provider for the selfie would be the car company themselves, or another company that would face match that with the picture on my ID document, or some other method of matching me to who I say I am. And finally, when I take the video of the car itself, the car company might run their own trust provisioning system. We call it an attestation engine. And that would then verify that the license plate on the car and the make and model and the condition of the car all match their records. If all of this checks out and my method of payment, which I provided, say, Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever coin, or even a credit card, is okay, then they could download the key into my phone and I could get in the car with keyless entry and drive away. Once I'm in the car, there could be another code on the dashboard from an insurance company where I could scan and on the spot swipe in a couple things, again, probably identity and maybe some other information, and then I could acquire insurance, supplemental car insurance for the duration of that rental. So that's how Pure Mountain enables the rapid consumption in a frictionless way of transaction services and goods that require more information than just payment. So it's really doing to trust and information what Bitcoin does to payment, to money, to value.
And how are the trust providers picked?
The trust providers are picked by the community. So the service providers and the consumers agree on trust providers. I mean, if I want to consume a service as a consumer and that service provider has picked a trust provider that I don't like, I'm not going to consume that service. The service provider similarly is going to have to pick trust providers that are trustworthy. So it's an open ecosystem. We're not vetting, we're not controlling. There's no big hand or invisible control on the ecosystem. It's really open. And the idea is that this open competition will breed the best of the best. The tokenomics that are set up in it are very important in doing that. And that would probably be your next question anyway, so I guess I can segue right into that. The way the tokenomics work is that the trust providers get paid for being trustworthy. The service providers pay the trust providers for that. So if I am a service provider who wants to give this rental car to a consumer, the consumer is going to pay me for that transaction. So it's only normal that I pay to get that transaction completed. As a service provider, I would then pay to Jumio, for example, to validate the driver's license of the person who swiped it in. And they will then give me that certificate that says it's valid and good, and they'll get the payment on that. The other aspect of the tokenomics is very interesting. So that's the straightforward payment for trust. The more trustworthy you are, the more you're going to earn. But the other aspect that's also very interesting is staking of tokens by trust providers. So if I'm a trust provider and I validate driver's licenses, and I do that for a living, and I validate hundreds of thousands of times per day, issuing all these certificates, all of those certificates are revenue streams. But at the same time, I have to do that right. If I do that wrong and say this is a good driver's license and this guy is who he says he is, and this license is not suspended, and all these other attestations, each one of which I'm going to be paid for around that person and their capability to drive, if I do that, I can stake tokens on that, and the service provider can then see that. So they could choose a trust provider who's got a reasonable amount of quote unquote insurance that they've staked on those certificates that they issue. If they then turn out to be false, if I issue a certificate on a driver's license that should not have been issued, the service provider could then collect that stake and then get those tokens that the trust provider puts up as an insurance. Ideally, as a trust provider, you will never lose your insurance because you're going to make sure that every certificate you issue is valid and is not false. So that we want to minimize that by providing that staking incentive. But in the end, what it means is the most trustworthy parties are going to provide the best insurance, and they're also going to earn the most Pure Mountain tokens because they're going to provide the most certificates.
And so is the information actually on the blockchain, or is the blockchain kind of used as an intermediary?
The blockchain is a hash chain. So what we do on the chain is, first of all, the protocol, Peer Chain Protocol, is a cross-chain protocol. So each group of stakeholders can run separate Pure Mountain instances, but consumers, trust providers, whatnot, can connect to the various Pure Mountain instances transparently. It's like connecting to a website with a web browser, basically. So what we store on the chain is actually a hash chain. So each transaction set or each group of stakeholders that runs a Pure Mountain instance will have a specific chain. It could be public or private. And on that chain are a series of hashes that represent all of the objects that are exchanged and all of the actions that are taken between the counterparties interacting in that context. So there's nothing exposed on chain that reveals, who bought what or who is who or any of this kind of thing. It's all hashes that have been salted and are correctly hidden from public analysis or view. Everything else is stored off chain. So all the messages that are sent and all the contents, the objects that are sent between the parties are encrypted using PKI. The root of your persona is your private key. And using this PKI, we encrypt everything and store all those objects off chain.
So what have been some of the biggest challenges of this project?
The biggest challenge has been fundraising, actually. The technical part is something I've been thinking about for many years. There are a lot of technical things that we've had to sort out and figure out how to do. And I think we're way ahead of a lot of other projects, which is good in many ways. I mean, I see some projects out there, and I'm just amazed that in late 2017, some of these projects were able to raise such astronomical sums of money, and they still don't know really how they're going to solve the big vision that they laid out. Whereas actually we've done all the technical thinking and have thought, a long way through the problem space, enough to have filed a patent on the peer chain protocol, actually, and are there. But fundraising this year has been quite a challenge. So we've been in a private sale for quite some time and have raised a significant amount of commitments and have a public sale scheduled for later this year. But that's been the main challenge in 2018.
So in the future, you plan on doing a public ICO?
We do. It's currently scheduled for October.
Okay, and then
so it's coming pretty quick.
And then do you have any other plans for the future going forward?
Lots. We will build and deploy. We have been building already for over a year. We need to get where we have a production quality deployment that we can actually run live services on, and that's in addition to simply robustness. I mean, we've been building production quality code. We didn't try to do any quick prototype code at the beginning, but it also is a feature set issue and platforms. The iOS SDK is something that we would like to have in a production environment, and we haven't built that yet. We've done the Android side only. So there's quite a bit of work we need to do, but we would like to be able to deploy in the first quarter of next year, the first production Peer Mountain instances. We've been working with a Swiss financial institution since 2016 on the project, and they are very keen to see the production quality code and run it in the test environment with their credit card holders. So that'll be quite exciting, and that might actually be the first live deployment that we end up doing.
Yeah, it's a really interesting project and very complicated. This whole digital identity thing is such an important issue as we go forward with the internet and just blockchain in general. Is there anything that I should have asked you that maybe I missed?
No, we covered a lot of bases. It is, as you just said, it is a complicated project, and I would like to find ways to make it simpler for people to understand. I think that's been also one of the main challenges that we faced is people like to buy into projects that are quite simple to understand, like a gambling coin or a stable coin or something like this. And this project is actually hard to wrap your head around. It takes a lot of thinking before you really get all the light bulbs on to understand the potential there. But we really believe that it's fundamental. What we are building, whether we're successful or not, someone needs to build it. And I don't think we'll see a successful blockchain-based decentralized ecosystem without a protocol for trust that can go across chains. And so that's something that is really critical in getting that across, the message that what we are building is so essential to the future of commerce, because it's not going to be a question of Ethereum or EOS or Bitcoin. They're all going to survive. Each one's going to have its own role. And we need the protocol that allows us to not only exchange value on chain, but also to establish trust across chains and within certain environments, within certain ecosystems where we want to transact and be able to do that. And that's what we're building.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Jason. It was a pleasure to be here. Be happy to be back anytime.
Thanks, Jed, for coming on the show. These decentralized identity systems are fantastic, and Peer Mountain is right there pushing this cutting-edge technology. The links to find out more about Peer Mountain are in the show notes. You've been listening to the Talking Cryptocurrency podcast. My name is Jason Rigden, and I have been your host. Thank you for listening to the show. If you liked it, would you please consider giving us a rating and a review on iTunes? I look forward to talking to you again soon. Have a great day.